Hello, my name's Elisa Lee, and my teammates are Brandon and Eleven, and this is our Critical Let's Play. Our project strives to compare two games with different styles of communication. Valorant, a 5v5 player versus player shooter game of attacking and defending, and Phasmophobia, a 1-4 player co-op horror game about ghost hunting. Our thesis is that the ease of accomplishing our goal increases when the enemy is an AI, but the enjoyability of accomplishing said goal increases when your enemy is another player.
If you don't know what Valorant is a 5v5 tactical first-person shooter with gameplay mechanics similar to CSGO. The main premise of the game is to attack and defend specific locations by planting or defusing a detonating spike. Being a game funded by Riot Games, unsurprisingly it has a very high presence in esports and the gaming community. Valorant is a team-based game that encourages communication between teammates. Common language includes enemies' positions, damage dealt, and locations of nearby weapons from other players. Most of the time, the games are pretty ordinary. Not everyone talks, and sometimes there's an outstanding player who actively uses their mic. But in general, communication is information. If my teammate is killed in a gunfight, a common thing they'll do is write in the chat the enemy and how much damage they themselves dealt to them. Riot Games is known for their naturally competitive games. It's no surprise that their top games, namely League of Legends and Valorant, have this sort of toxic wash over them. People who have played the game long enough naturally expect to see some sort of toxicity or harassment, not always directed at them,
this ugly character in his flashes, I swear to God.
but generally existent.
Dude, you blinded me, man.
Sorry. In an attempt to combat toxicity, Valorant implements a lot of communication-based features such as voice mute, text mute, and match chat bans. I actually encountered a person who got chat banned during the match for saying the N-word. It happened almost instantly as well, which means Riot has a ban list of words that trigger their comms abuse detection. Oh, and also that ban is announced for the whole match too. Toxicity happens for a number of reasons. When a player is toxic towards an enemy, they often feel some sort of annoyance towards them or their playstyle. Even simple phrases like get wrecked or GGEZ are enough to elicit a reaction of sorts, as those words are commonly used to demean enemies and remind them just how bad they are. Given Valorant's competitive nature, most players want to be the best, or at least better than someone on the enemy team, even if they don't outright admit it. Oh wow. Would you look at that? However, it's different when it comes to players being toxic towards their own teammates. Being a team game, player synergy is important. Of course, there are times where a single player can take on the entire enemy team. Alright.
One enemy remaining.
Dude, you know all the game secrets.
However, more often than not, you'll be working with your team, and how well you get along with your team makes all the difference. If someone feels like a teammate's slowing them down, oftentimes that warrants a level of toxicity or talking. That person becomes the blame, and it slowly becomes easier to point the finger at them whenever things go wrong. But generally, it's also easier to blame anything and everything except yourself when things don't go as expected. What the
Oh, Omen, you're so bro. Coach,
Why
mate.
do they spam all the util in the choke? These stupid
Toxicity is less likely to arise if things go the way everyone on the team hopes. The higher the tensions are by the end of the game, the more players celebrate together, unsurprisingly. Imagine playing a match that goes on for 40 minutes but feels like a whole hour, and then finally winning the match. Alright, good game. Have a good day, everyone. We did it!
Me too.
Love you all. After fighting 24 long and intense rounds, my team won. And honestly, even if it wasn't close and we won by a landslide, it still feels good to win in general. You guys are
Good
insane.
game, you guys.
Attackers win.
Alright, have a good night, everyone.
Good night, you guys.
Now, let's look at Phasmophobia, a game that, despite being somewhat easier to win, gives you very different sense of achievement or dissatisfactions. Phasmophobia is a horror co-op game centered around the ghost hunting. It is one of the few games that place strong emphasis, if not requirement, or verbal communications. Gameplay mechanic and feature require the use of your voice in order to progress and accomplish your goals in the games. For the purpose of immersions, the ghosts often take a special verbal curse from players, such as if the ghost name is mentioned, the player swear or they speak into a voice box. Phasmophobia also has callouts, but common language includes ghost sign, response, and instructions.
Oni.
Oni?
Yeah, Oni.
Make sure we got that.
What was the evidence? The other piece of evidence?
Freezing
temps.
temps.
Oni-chan.
In the term of restriction language, Phasmophobia has a little no restriction, being a game reliant on communications between player and AI that can recognize their words. This recognizes the profane language entirely, and in accordance, the ghost can react. There is no text chat either, so the game is entirely depends on speaking. Technically, you could use the slur and curse words, which lead to no consequence beside mixed reaction of your teammates. But if you are in solo, theoretically, you could say basic whatever you want.
Not that I'm ever gonna play solo though.
In any case, Phasmophobia's gameplay remains intense, but it doesn't give the same rush you might get from Valorant. Being a player versus environment game, toxicity against the game is a little too hard lasting. This is more strategy involved in the games, and more important, a single enemy is to unite against, and there is no real fighting or defeating the enemy. Just figuring out who is the enemy is the basic puzzle, and while there's still achievement in the completing so, it is a different since in comparisons to winning a game against 5 enemies.
Yay! Yay, we got it.
Yay!
Most of the communication will involve actively trying to find clue of the ghost, reaching out to the illicit and the response from it, or strategy talk. The team sets a unspoken response to help everyone to figure out clues, the type of ghost, equipment needed, and any objectives to meet.
Hey! The book!
Oh, it's writing?
Yeah, the book. They wrote something.
That said, when it's come to getting the end result, there is a lot less anger or toxicity involved with losing because it's more difficult to win at time. Oftentimes, the ghost can be shy, give off fever hints, and sometimes force player to make wild guesses entirely. So more often than not, you will get the ghost wrong or whatever reason, but unlikely losing the Valorant match, it feels as a lot less than the end of the world.
Oh.
Jen.
Well, we still got money.
Oh, well.
Phasmophobia's gameplay is slow pace, which seemingly not time limit, means you can play rounds for a little or as long as you do like. Stake is lower in Phasmophobia, but because of that, winning and lose are somewhat glazed over.
Damn it! Well, that sucks. Did it kill all of us?
Well, that was unfortunate.
It killed all of us?
Yeah, I don't know how it killed us.
Darn.
Now let's compare the two games. Valorant and Phasmophobia play at two very different paces. Valorant is anywhere from 13 to 25, maybe even more rounds of adrenaline pumping, gun shooting, rush of attack, and defense.
Spike down. One enemy remaining.
But Phasmophobia creates tension through fear and suspense, setting up traps, gathering information, using tools, and what feels like solving puzzles, all while treading lightly as to not let the ghost steal your life away. But both team games are still similar, Both games involve a lot of callouts, both require information to succeed, both often involve a lot of coordination in different ways, and most importantly, teamwork is essential. Still, the paces and playstyles impact players' reactions to victory and defeat, respectively. Valorant, a game of higher stakes and competitiveness, gives a more rewarding feeling through victory, or a more depressing feeling through failure.
Player standing. One enemy remaining.
Nice.
Let's
What a
go!
hero! Fucking
That
love
was
this
clutch
guy.
as
Insane, dude.
Meanwhile, with Phasmophobia, a game played at one's own pace, winning and losing become more complicated. You can get the ghost type wrong but finish other objectives and get money for it, so it's up to players to think of it as either a win or a loss.
I'm not starting to click more evidence, sorry.
There have actually been studies comparing similar games, analyzing the behavior and enjoyment levels between people in player versus player games and people in player versus environment.
One enemy remaining.
You win this.
In Daniel Schaefer's article, Causes of State Hostility and Enjoyment in Player vs. Player and Player vs. Environment video games, he states that, in a gameplay situation, frustration is produced by the opponent, whether it be a computer or a human, who hinders success.
We need to talk.
Huh?
We need to talk about your camera skills.
I didn't get it, did I?
Several research studies indicate that the simple act of playing competitively with another human being may increase hostility, while player versus environment situations may be viewed as less competitive by some because there are no social stakes such as earning bragging rights and respect from friends. As a result, it can be concluded that players in PvP condition will report a significantly greater increase in state hostility over PvE players.
Yeah, look at him with his YouTube.
And that brings us back to our main thesis. Schaefer's research helped back up that while playing any game that involves an opponent causes frustration, one that involves playing competitively with and against another player provides more satisfaction because of things like social stakes and competitive ranking. So conclusion, play Valorant!
Just kidding. I mean, it's up to you. But what we mean to say is that through comparison and contrast of Valorant's and Phasmophobia's differences and similarities in communication, playstyle, and general enjoyment, we learn that Valorant takes the path of more enjoyment/dissatisfaction at the expense of time and ease, while Phasmophobia moves in the opposite direction and chooses varied difficulty but a more glazed ending. If you really wanted to, you could create a graph comparing satisfaction level with overall difficulty for games, and if you did, you'd see these two games eyeing each other from opposite ends. But if you really want to make comparisons like so, then go on, give Valorant and Phasmophobia a try. Play now, and thanks for watching.